Thieves-Chapter, Lost, page 175. That night we slept in a clearing. We chose to stay outside. Inside seemed too claustrophobic, and besides, we were more than happy to be close to the lodge. Son, plenty of room in my place. I'd helped my dad to his place and had waited in the main living space while he went behind a screen to change and get ready for bed. His spot backed into a natural corner in the cave so that 2 of the 4 walls were stone. The other 2 had been crafted with a wooden frame hung with wool blankets. The structure had a roof, an old hospital blanket that sealed in the idea of privacy if nothing else. In the space was a cot and a small shelf made from planks of wood, separated with cut logs and filled with books, folded clothes, paper, and some braided and bunched herbs. His rosary beads hung from a corner of the shelf, and in between a pile of sweaters and a stack of spineless books was a framed plastic ID card. I went in close, checking that he was still busy behind the screen first. It was my mother's health card, the green plastic embedded with white letters that spelled out her name, Mary E. Dusume, or Dusum. Sex, F. DOB, 03-15-2027. Issued, 04-11-2049. The rectangle for her picture was harder to make out. It was dark with age and wear, like she was standing in the shadows even then. He returned, his eyes half closed even as he spoke, leaning on a curved crutch that curved under his arm like a smooth cradle. The reunion, the sweat, the long day had all taken their toll. He wore a pair of gray sweatpants and a droopy wife beater that showed the sagging skin on his arms and the strength still hard in his chest. It also revealed a series of scars knotted like bark up his side, around to his back, and climbing up his neck into the back of his hairline. Nah, I'm okay. Just gonna help the crew with their stuff. Maybe I'll sneak in after. He nodded, pulled me in with one ropey arm for another hug, and patted me hard on the back, digging his chin into the crook of my collarbone so I knew he was working out the reality of my physical presence. I turned to leave, pausing at the exit. Dad? Yeah? He was lowering himself onto a cot. Mitch gave himself to them so that I could get away. Mom couldn't. Dad hung his head, perched on the edge of his cot, knuckles flat against the mattress like a resting gorilla so that his shoulders sat high by his ears. He didn't say anything. It was too much right now. Maybe soon we can talk about them, eh? Real soon, French. He kept his face tilted towards the floor. Real soon. I was exhausted, but we needed to talk. The others knew it. When I returned, they were already sitting at the fire. Someone had thoughtfully helped Slopper with his tent, and he was already passed out inside of it. I could hear his reedy snore through the canvas. You staying out here? Tree seemed surprised, but also a bit relieved. Yeah, I'm still a part of this family, aren't I? Yeah, Ziguan answered. It's just that you have a real family now. Real? What's that supposed to mean? You're not real? I picked up a stone by my foot. So this won't hurt then. I chucked it at him through the fire. Ow! Jeez. He rubbed his shin where it had bounced off his shin. All right. We're real. We laughed. So we need to figure some things out then, I guess. I addressed Mig, who was sitting up very straight, staring into the low flames. No, not really. I was surprised by his answer. What do you mean? It was Rose. Don't we need a plan? Sure we do, he replied. But the end is the same. We're going to get Minerva. French was led here by that belief, and it was turned out to be a good one. Minerva is close by, and he found his dad. That's a pretty overwhelming sign we're on the right path. I think we expected more hesitation, and maybe a story or 7 about what happened at the schools. Not that Mig was weak or cowardly. Not at all. just that we expected him to be more skeptical, to calm our feverish ambition, to be the voice of steadfast reason. Instead, we found a tired old man and a cooperative soldier, all wrapped up in one Indian. It was like he had faded somehow. I just mean the dreams, the words. Don't we need to talk about Minerva finding the key? She didn't find anything. She always had it. Maybe we just need to be better listeners. I pressed him. What about strategy? A plan? Shouldn't we be mounting an attack now, while it's dark? This isn't my territory. Tomorrow we can meet with the council and figure things out from there. He yawned and walked out of the ring of light thrown by the fire. Right now, I need sleep. We're off too. I wasn't sure Tree and his brother had picked up on the subtle shift in Mig. They stood and made their way over to their tent, more in unison when they were tired than any other time. I noticed their cap was on neither head. Maybe that was it. Maybe we were all just exhausted. It'd been another day on the run, another day being woken up by strangers in our space, and then, at the same time, a day unlike any other we'd had. Hell, I was tired. Wob started the work of putting out the fire safely, but she had an odd serenity in her movements. Chiboy began his usual end-of-the-night patrol. I turned towards the steady drone of Slopper's snore before Rose grabbed my arm, just above the elbow. Can you come to my place for a minute? The invitation knocked some of my anxiety out of my limbs. I rarely got to spend time with Rose. We were a sad, rushed bunch these days, but the slightest touch and I was right back to being a teenage boy with the biggest crush in the world. I thought maybe it might be more than a crush. What with that afternoon by the river? But I couldn't be sure. Everything was hot and cold and horrifying and hopeful. Terror is an odd bedfellow. Sure. I crawled in the tent after her and was immediately struck by how empty it was. There was one bedroll in the middle of the space. Against the back wall were her bags, one open with a couple pieces of clothing pulled out. Beside her bed was a small solar-powered lamp that cast a moon glow that didn't quite reach the corners. In here, I could smell the angst and earth awkward of my own body, and I was embarrassed. I stayed by the door while she crawled to the back of the wall. You okay? I wasn't sure I was. Yeah. That's crazy, eh? Finding your dad? Yep. She examined my face for a moment before continuing. I think Mig is a bit worried. About rescuing Minerva? I started to pull off my sweater. It was warm in here. No. She tilted her head and thought. No, I don't think so. I think it's more about you. Me? I paused, my sweater halfway over my head. What about me? Well, you've changed. I was quiet. Had I really changed, after all? I didn't feel changed. I just felt less. Or maybe it was more. Not changed so much as living at a different volume. And I think, even though it's great that we found your dad, well, you know what happens when we find family. Now she sounded worried. She dropped her beautiful face so that the waves of her hair covered half of it. I wanted so badly to move it aside. I wanted so badly to kiss her again. And I wanted to tell her I wouldn't leave. That I would never leave. But I couldn't. The memories I carried from the days I'd had with my parents were kept in a cradle boards in my mind, situated in complete safety, even the bad ones. In them, there is always this feeling, an understanding more than an emotion, of protection. It didn't matter what was happening in the world. My job was to be Francis. That was all. Just to remain myself. And now, well, now I had a different family to take care of. My job was to hunt and scout and build camp and break camp to protect the others. I winced even thinking about it. My failure. I'd failed at protecting, and now, as a result, I failed at remaining myself. Maybe I would stay. Maybe it would be the only way I could keep my sanity, to stay with my dad and inch my way back to Francis. She made her way, on hands and knees, across her bed and over to me. I won't ask you to come with us, French. I wouldn't do that to you. She was right in front of me now, her face an inch from mine. She smelled like sweet grass and a deeper smoke. Despite the shock of finding my dad, the odd behavior of Mig, the confusion of the new place and how we arrived, the stress of Minerva's impending rescue, all I wanted to do was kiss this girl. So I did. She didn't pull away, and so I leaned in until we were pushed back onto the layers of blankets that made up her bed. I pulled back to look at her, to make sure she was good. She smiled, grabbed my braid, and brought me back to her. I can't say how long we were there before the song interrupted us, but when I caught my breath and came out into the bowel of the valley, it was full dark. It was impossible to ignore for a few reasons. For one, any sort of noise could bring the predators, so we tried to stay quiet. And then there was the song itself. That's what sent me out of the tent. Do you hear that? She whispered through my hair. I listened. There it was. Yeah, I responded against her neck. We stayed still, just listening to the shake of a dry seed rattle, alert to danger, until the singing began. Migwans. Now I stood near the fire pit and set my feet in the direction of his voice. It was a low, moaning voice, the kind of the body used to travel through pain, the kind a child uses when they've realized the higher pitched tone used for bringing their mothers isn't working and they are all alone after all. From the back entrance of the cave, I saw several guards. They too were listening, but since they stayed there by the doorway, I guess they weren't too concerned and we weren't in any imminent danger. I found Mig by the southeast wall. He'd lit a smudge in a candle so that his face was clear in the handful of light and obscured by the handfuls of smoke. I stood back a bit while he sang, knocking his rattle against the air and rocking on his heels where he rested. It was warmer outside now, and the wind in this valley was minimal. Mig wore a t-shirt and black jeans without the burden of coats, and I was reminded of his life outside of us. The scars from his school day, the tattoo of a feather below his collarbone, the outline of the buffalo on the back of his hand. His hair was longer than usual, and the sides had grown in so that he seemed younger, less severe. His duct-tape boots were pulled off his feet and placed at the edge of the light where he sat. I waited until he was done singing, until after he had mumbled some words and smudged himself. I waited still while he settled into a more relaxed, cross-legged position, and even when he packed up his rattle and docked feather. I waited. Well, come here then. He didn't look up as he put away his bundle. I came into the light and sat opposite him, mimicking his cross-legged pose. You still up? It was an odd question that he didn't mean, since, obviously, I was still up. What he meant was, why was I still up? Haven't made it to my tent yet. I meant it to sound nonchalant, but his return smile made me blush. Rose must have been lonely in that tent by herself. I squirmed a bit. It's okay, boy. All I'm gonna say is babies are the most important thing we have to move ahead. So when they come, they need to come to families that want them and are ready to take responsibility. It's not like, we're not. He held up his hand. Don't worry. No need to explain to me. You're a good man, French. I already know that. We sat in silence for a minute before I switched gears, the uncomfortable subject making it easier to ask what I really wanted to. Mig, are you okay? Are any of us okay? No, really. I leaned in to touch his knee. I needed him to know I was serious. You seem weird since we got here. Just since we got here? He smirked, then waved away his own lightheartedness. I know what you mean, French. He gathered the edges of his buckskin bundle and tied them off. Just tired, I guess. Yeah, all this running. No, I'm more tired of missing Isaac is all. Just an old man with an old love, I guess. All this talk about Minerva in the schools must have brought up a lot of unresolved feelings for him. I thought about him pouring 100 vials into the ground, one by one, mourning his partner. Well, I wasn't sure what to say. We'll get Minerva, and then we'll shut them down. All of them. He looked me in the eyes, the first time since I'd sat down. I know you will, Francis. I know you will.